It is possible to leave instructions for your children on how they can spend their inheritance. There's three basic ways to do this. One way is what we call preparatory language in your will, and that basically says that you're asking the children to spend the money in a certain way. For example, you could instruct them to spend the money wisely. You could instruct them to maybe give to charity with their inheritance. It's also possible to instruct your children that you want them to spend and invest in such a way that they also have money left over when they die to pass on to the next generation. With preparatory language, which is the instructions that I've described, that language is instructional, but it is not legally binding. So if the children fail to follow your instructions or refuse to follow your instructions, there's really nothing that can be done after you've already passed away. The court won't go in and take the money away from them or that type of thing, because these are just instructions that are not binding and unenforceable. Another way to leave instructions for your beneficiaries would be to place a restriction on the sale of the asset. This really works best, for example, with real estate. If the family has a lake home or maybe a farm or something like that, the will could instruct the beneficiary to use that property for a period of time, but restricting them from selling that property during that period of time. So let's say, for example, there's a farm, and the restriction on the sale of the farm would keep me from selling it, or maybe even from mortgaging the farm, but I would be able to live on the farm. I would get the benefits of the farm during that period of time that was specified. In Iowa, that time is limited to 21 years. After 21 years, the restriction automatically drops off. That does not mean the property is automatically sold. It just means I'm free to sell after that 21 years expires. Perhaps the best way to control money after you're gone is with the use of a trust. There are various trusts that can be used, but the typical trust would say, for example, that the trustee will manage the inheritance for a period of time. So for example, if I've got a teenage children, if I have teenage children, then the trust would manage that money on behalf of the children. The children would get the benefit of the money. If they needed money to pay for school or for dance shoes or football shoes or something like that, the trustee could spend the money for them or direct the spending of that money. But the trustee is actually managing that money both as to the investments and to the spending. And typically when the child reaches a certain age, let's say at age 45, then the trustee would pay all the money out to that child, and there would be no more restrictions on that money. It's also possible to hold that money during the lifetime of that child, and again, hold the money for the next generation. The child, the first generation, would get the benefit of that trust fund during their lifetime, but when they subsequently die, then the trust passes on to the next generation.